Hello YouTube, this is Viper Venom. Today I decided we were going to do something that two other YouTubers kind of got me hooked on. So all credit goes to these two YouTubers. I am going to look them up right now. I do know one off the top of my head, that is Grim Gaddy. Thank you for inspiring me to make this. It's been a while since the last time I made a video like this. But one is Grim Gaddy, and the other is, when I find it, I am incredibly slow today. The other is hold on. The other was Man versus History. So Grim Gaddy and Man versus History inspired me to make this video. Also, this is a spin-off of, I guess spin-off or type of, it's like an exact same video that Man versus History made on his channel about the Gunslinger that he did about the old West Gunslinger. He did a whole in-depth tutorial of and talking about how it was done, what they had, because back then people that moved on cattle trains, he was right, there was exactly almost small pay, and what they had to make work. So there wasn't no fancy suit and ties, three-piece suits, fancy shoes, fancy hats, fancy engraved revolvers when you were walking across miles and miles on a wagon train. There was no fancy stuff. So what they had is what they had to make work. So I'm going to do what Man vs. History did on his channel and recreate one of the gunfighters. Not a real one. This is completely made up that I did myself. Not this one. This is the Charlie Prince one that I never made a video on about from 310 to Yuma. We're going to completely change this up. Go to wardrobe. This is also online. By the way, I am completely broke on online, so there is no way I'm going to be able to do anything. But first things first, if they did wear two pistols, they would not have an offhand holster. They would be completely screwed in that department. They would just tuck it in their waistband, and or they would just put it on their gun belt and just hope it didn't fall out. So we're gonna start from the bottom, or from top to bottom. Outfits, I have none. See, none. And then there's just some I've created over time. I started this when I first started the game. That hat looks fucking horrible. There is the Garwood that I actually adore. Anyway, on to our video. Hats, if I had to pick a hat that would probably be seen a lot, it would be the military scout hat. Also, that looks a lot higher than it does in the story mode, but that could just be me. I do have the red one, so this is exactly how a hat would look in the Old West on a wagon train. Sometimes it'd have a flipped up brim on one side. It'd have like a literal rope band and just a very crumpled top. Kind of pressed in, try to make their own pressed top if they wanted to. But that's the one that I would see in my mind is a very worn hat because, well, they didn't have the money back then to just go do whatever. Bandanas, if they wore one, probably wouldn't be patterned, but I don't have that option. Well, I do, but I'm completely broke in this mode. So I am going to take this coat off right now just to give you a good look, because it is literally dark. Bandanas. They would either wear a bandana, like a pattern bandana, like this one. Also, let's get a check on see how that looks. Let's get a just kind of look at it real quick. Okay, that probably wouldn't look like that. That looks like a newer model one. It'd probably look like this. Okay, it is brightening up now, so you see it. Anyway, oops, my bad. Anyway, put this down. Their shirts would probably be rolled. Their pants either tucked in or hanging if they weren't too long. Neckwear, if they did, they would not have a tie at all. They would probably have a neckerchief of some sort, which would probably be a bandana tied into a neckerchief to keep it out of the way. Coats, if they'd wear one, they'd probably only have one for the cold, like I do right here. And then they'd either have not one of these, because these are high-priced, or they were high-priced from tailors back then. Duster coat, I don't know what just happened to my coat, because what in the world? Oh, good lord. Okay. They would have just a canvas coat, like this one. Probably wouldn't be very fine, it'd probably be dirty and worn, so I'd do a dirty worn one. Or maybe some didn't, so you can do that too. I'm going to put it on just because it's the duster coat. It looks freaking amazing. Ponchos, it'd probably be if they were walking across the desert or in New Mexico or Mexico, which honestly I wouldn't know too much about it. But they would wear a poncho, probably one that was just very tattered and worn they threw over themselves. But we're going to stick to the duster coat because we're going to talk about the American Frontier one. Vests, they probably wouldn't have a very fine paisley like this one. So, the traditional in whatever you can get it in, because that's exactly how they did it. It was just whatever they could afford they would get for themselves and or their families. There is a leather one, the Lancer vest, which I guess works if it wasn't like if it wasn't exactly like there is no way this degree will ever happen, but if it did, it would be absurd. Like 400 degrees hot, they would probably not wear a leather vest, or they probably wouldn't wear a vest period. They probably wouldn't even wear a shirt. Knowing these days out here in the countryside, they would not wear a vest, shirt, or coat if it was 100 degrees. But if they did, it probably leather for maybe a colder climate, just a little bit colder, to where it was actually suitable to wear one. Or this traditional, which it's not really leather, it's just like I guess like a fabric material that's been torn a bit. So, we're going to do the white one I have, because it's not perfectly white, and nothing is perfectly clean. Shirts, even though we can barely see it, if they wore something, it'd probably be just a normal, everyday shirt, and definitely not this pure white, because nothing was ever that clean. It'd probably be like a dirty gray. Or you have the collar shirt, which I have. I have one that's literally a fine pin shirt, and then I have a black one and a red one. I do have an everyday shirt as well that's not... Actually, we're going to do the everyday, so... Not the everyday overshirt, but the everyday shirt. I got that completely wrong. I do have that in black. But we're going to do this white one where it's just a little tad bit dirty, because it just adds on to the character, in my mind. Suspenders, depends on what time of, whatever they call it, what time of day. Or not what time of day, what time of era. Because if it was around the 1800s, yes, there would have been suspenders, and suspenders still carry on today. But, of course, take my money. I have so much anyway. But if they wanted to keep their pants up and they had limited options, they would probably get a fairly cheap cotton suspender. I mean, this is just Red Dead, but they would get a very cheap suspender, or they would find something to... They just get really tight pants. Or trousers, as they called it in that period. Gloves, they would probably get very tight gloves if they were needed. But since it was mainly a hotter climate, they wouldn't really wear gloves unless they knew they were going to go into a colder climate, or they just like wearing gloves when shooting. I knew some people do that. Buckles, personal preference sometimes. I mean, I'm just going to throw this on because I like it. But, if you want to know the truth, they did not have very fancy buckles with jewels and stuff in them. They just had the everyday thing they could afford. So they would have the buckle that came with the belt, and they would have the holster that came with the belt, which was probably sold separately. I have no clue. But, and belts, sometimes they, whoops, wrong one. Gun belts, again, wrong one. It was kind of like this. They'd look like this dead boot gun belt. See, because the agency looks really fine, and it's a little messed up, but not too much. And honestly, this one has no loops, so if you're going for maybe an 1850s, 1860s type gunslinger, normally these type of gun belts wouldn't have bullet loops or cartridge loops, since, well, the guns in that period didn't carry cartridges until, I believe, 1870s, 1880s, when they changed and made cartridges. Because you were walking around cap and ball needing to switch your cylinder every 6 shots in those guns. Like Wild Bill's Navies. Which I imagined he had 12 shots, 6 and 6 each gun. So he probably wouldn't have to, and Wild Bill was a complete badass, so anything he shot at, he would hit. But depends on what style you're going for. If you want cartridge loops because you're going to be the 1880s, 1890s type cowboy, go ahead. Not really a big deal. Or if you want to be just a little bit lesser, where, I mean, I guess you could get this too, because, I mean, it was what you could afford. You didn't get paid like $18 an hour or $20 an hour. $20 is surprisingly a good amount. But it wasn't a very high-end wage. It was like $6 to $8 an hour. And sometimes that was a day's wage that you would get at the end of the week. Sometimes they'd hold it for a month. It just depends. So they really were stretched then, and things in stores were not cheap. I mean, a can of beans was $8. It was $8, really. And it was not easy to get anything in the Old West. The Old West was not easy. It is fun to learn and look about, but it is not easy. But I'd go with the agency gun belt, the first one you will ever get, because it is probably exactly what you would see on most cowboys that were really money deprived, where they needed money but couldn't afford to get any high-end classy stuff like the Guerrero that has like studs and a cool snake on the holster. Yeah, it's they didn't have that type of money. They had this type of money, So, me personally, because I normally carry the navies, I do the agency, because that's just what I have. Bandoliers, depends on if they were going to need to be fully locked and loaded for a real shoot down. They would get like 1 to 2 bandoliers. Sometimes you get one that have go around your belt. But pants, now here's what got me. The studded pants, and I don't really have a whole lot. I got like 3 different choices here. I had the cuffed hound pants, the bandito, and the studded pants. I'm going to do the studded pants because, why? They're worn down. They're not in the best shape. You see, because they're distressed on the pant legs. And that's normally where the first thing pants go out at. And that's just wise, because they're so distressed and they have been worn. On to chaps. If they could afford them, they'd probably have them. Or if you want to do it because if it's a taller boot, you could do that. If you have boots that are just smaller, not tall enough, you could get the chaps, the multi-tone half chaps, to, I guess, make it look more taller. Boots, definitely no classy shoes, so Burnham boots, not a thing. Parson boots, nowhere even close. The Rutherford boots, my bad, probably not that either, because they weren't very, classy. They were really worn, like this one is, and these. See, that's not worn down enough in the worn ropers. These are kind of worn. These are very worn, so I would do these because they couldn't go buy a pair of boots every day. Spurs, it's personal I guess. If you want to have spurs, you can have them. I'd throw them on because a lot of gunfighters or cowboys that were deprived of their money, when they had spurs for their horses, they'd probably wear them. I mean, I'd hope so. Anyway, this is how I would imagine if the black and white pictures were not black and white. I do have a Schofield currently. Had a little fun with the gun spinning. We'll holster that real quick, and we're gonna grab my navy, my beautiful navy with a pearl grip that I accidentally went the first person in. Let's see if I can maintain you. I got a nice little pearl grip on there, and it's got the navy symbol, and it looks so beautiful. One other truth, it reminds me of the Griswold at Gunnison. That's the absolute closest I can think, because it looks exactly like it with the frame there. It doesn't have the pin you can push out, so changing cylinders is not a thing. You actually go one by one, and that is a pain in the butt, let me tell you. And if they carried rifle, it'd probably be on shoulder. But yeah, he's a little bit irritating. Anyway, or they would throw it over their shoulder if they wanted to, or their back. Throw it on their shoulder, throw it on their back, it really didn't matter. It just depended on if they were going to need it later, or if they were going to need it soon. If they were hunting, they'd throw it over their shoulder, but if they were going to be moving horseback a whole lot, they'd probably put it in the scabbard that would be on their saddle, or they would throw it on their back. And I like this hat I chose. It works pretty well. Yeah, and this navy is about as close as you're going to get to an 1840s, 1850s type. 1840s? No, 1850s type cowboy would look like this. The shirt does look a little bit too nice, but that's all I can afford. And this is my best interpretation of a Western gunfighter that is deprived of his money on a wagon train. Anyway, thank y'all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one.